In the heart of Lagos, Nigeria, three childhood friends, Tund, Jibril, and Ibuka grew up sharing everything: meals, dreams, and the same dusty football pitch behind their school. Each of them was fueled by one common desire to escape poverty and find greener pastures in the United Kingdom. Their mothers sold pepper and fish in the market. Their fathers were either absent or struggling artisans. But the boys believed that life had more to offer beyond the shores of Nigeria. Through saving, hustling, and help from relatives abroad, they secured student visas and headed to London. That was the beginning of everything, and the end of their innocence. The sun had barely risen in Lagos, Nigeria, when three young men, Ibuka, Tund, and Jibril, stood at the airport gates, ready to leave behind everything they knew. Their eyes sparkled with hope, nerves, and anticipation. To them, the United Kingdom was more than just a destination. It was a promise. A promise of greener pastures, of a better life, and of dreams long buried under the weight of poverty. Back home they had nothing but each other. They grew up in the same dusty neighborhood, played barefoot football in muddy streets, and studied by candlelight whenever power was out, which was almost every night. Their mothers were market women, their fathers either absent or working odd jobs. Yet their dreams knew no boundaries. Through years of hustle, prayer, and sacrifice, they managed to secure student visas. Relatives contributed, neighbors donated, and the boys themselves worked day and night, selling recharge cards, teaching children, and even working at construction sites. All for this one moment. Their plane landed at Heathrow Airport on a cold winter morning. The cold wind hit their faces like a slap, but they smiled. This was the price of opportunity. The streets were wet, the air smelled of roasted chestnuts and damp concrete, and the skies seemed to hang heavy with gray. But it didn't matter. "We made it," Ibuka whispered almost to himself. They shared a small apartment in East London. It wasn't much, just one room with peeling walls, a noisy radiator, and 3 mattresses on the floor, but it was theirs. The first few weeks felt magical. They explored the city with wide-eyed wonder, took pictures near Big Ben, rode the double-decker buses, and marveled at the underground trains that moved like magic. But reality set in quickly. The cost of living was high. Rent was suffocating. Food was expensive. Their student schedules didn't allow them to work full-time, and most part-time jobs required UK experience or legal documentation they didn't have. Ibuka was the first to find a job, cleaning floors at a local hospital during the night shift. He scrubbed toilets, emptied bins, and mopped endless corridors, returning home exhausted just before sunrise. Yet he never complained. He believed every hour spent working was a step toward a brighter future. Tund and Jibril weren't so lucky. Rejections piled up. They went from store to store handing out printed CVs, only to be ignored. The little money they came with quickly ran out. They began skipping meals. Some days they shared a single packet of instant noodles. One night, as they huddled together under thick blankets trying to keep warm, a knock came at the door. A fellow Nigerian student who lived upstairs, a man in his early 30s, stepped in wearing designer clothes and flashy sneakers. "If you want to make real money," he said, casually tossing a set of car keys in his hand, "I can show you how. But it's not for the faint-hearted." His voice was calm, his smile confident. Ibuka turned his eyes away. He could already feel the danger that lurked behind the man's offer. But Tund and Jibril? They were curious. And that curiosity would change everything. As winter deepened, so did the weight of reality. The once glowing excitement of a new life began to dim under the shadows of struggle. Ibuka, though exhausted from his night job at the hospital, remained steadfast. He was studying software engineering, and each evening after work he buried himself in books and online tutorials, barely sleeping. His eyes were tired, but his spirit remained alive. Tund and Jibril, however, were beginning to unravel. The rejection letters kept coming. Interviews led nowhere. Employers wanted experience they didn't have. The bills kept rising: rent, transportation, phone credit, and tuition fees. Back home in Nigeria, their families were still expecting monthly support, not realizing that London wasn't the land of overflowing milk and honey they'd imagined. It was during one particularly cold night that the doorbell rang again. The same man who had once offered them a faster way returned this time with more than words. He drove a black BMW with custom leather seats, wore a gold wristwatch that sparkled in the dark, and held an air of untouchable confidence. His name was Victor, but around the Nigerian circles in East London, He was known as Chairman. He handed Tund and Jabril each a phone and a laptop. "This is how you stop being broke," he said. "You won't hurt anyone. All you need is a bit of cleverness and guts." He explained the game: credit card fraud, stolen identities, romance scams targeting lonely individuals online. It sounded complex but also strangely easy. A few clicks here, a few fake profiles there, and money would pour in. No blood. No weapons. Just brains. Victor smiled. Jabril was sold. Tund hesitated, but not for long. Hunger and desperation made the choice for him. That night, they returned home in silence. Ibuka was sitting on his mattress, laptop open, revising code for an upcoming project. His fingers were numb from cleaning floors all night, but he typed on. Tund threw his new phone on the bed. Jabril pulled out a wad of cash from his pocket and placed it in front of Ibuka. "We've found a better way. You should join us. This city doesn't reward hard work, it rewards smart moves." Ibuka stared at the money, then looked at his friends. "Not all smart moves lead to the right destination," he replied calmly. "There's a cost for everything." They laughed. "Suit yourself," Jabril muttered. Within weeks, Tund and Jabril transformed. They wore designer clothes, bought expensive sneakers, and ate at fancy restaurants. They dropped out of college, claiming they didn't need degrees to make money. Ibuka distanced himself. He didn't judge them, he just didn't want to be pulled into something that would destroy everything he had sacrificed for. As time passed, whispers began to float through their building. People were getting arrested. Some disappeared. Police vans started appearing near Nigerian neighborhoods in South London. The tension was thick. Victor warned them to lay low. But greed has no brakes. Tund and Jabril took on a major deal reselling stolen electronics purchased with cloned cards. It was meant to be their biggest score. But someone had tipped off the authorities. It happened on a Friday night. Jabril and Tund had arranged a secret handover of high-end stolen electronics near a quiet industrial warehouse in Peckham. It was their biggest operation, yet thousands of pounds worth of goods, all acquired through forged credit cards and fake delivery addresses. The plan was to meet a buyer who would pay them in cash. Victor had even called it their elevation night. But what they didn't know was that one of their past buyers had been caught and had given names that now appeared on a police surveillance list. As they walked toward the drop-off location, a van screeched to a halt. Within seconds, undercover police officers in dark jackets emerged from the shadows. "Police, get on the ground." Jabril panicked. He ran, turning into a narrow alley, but there was nowhere to go. Tund froze, paralyzed by fear and disbelief. They were both arrested. Laptops, phones, fake IDs, illegal bank documents. Everything was seized. Victor vanished, disappearing like smoke, never to be seen again. News spread quickly across the African student community in London. Headlines in community WhatsApp groups and online blogs read, 2 Nigerian students arrested in £100,000 fraud scheme. Ibuka saw the news while seated at his work desk. He stared at the photos, his friends handcuffed, heads down, their future shattered. He didn't cry. He just closed his laptop, stepped outside into the cold, and stood under the cloudy London sky, his breath rising like smoke. That same week, Ibuka received news that his final school project had impressed the CEO of a growing tech firm. He was offered a paid internship, one that could sponsor his work visa after graduation. His hard work was finally paying off. The internship became a job. The job led to promotions. In 2 years, he rose to become a lead software developer. His apps began to get noticed even by investors. Quietly, steadily, Ibuka was building something far greater than quick cash. He was building legacy. He never forgot Tund and Jabril. From time to time, he wrote to Jabril in prison. His letters were always filled with encouragement but never pity. He hoped one day they'd find their way back. As for Tund, he was deported after serving a shorter sentence. Back in Nigeria, he returned to his father's abandoned workshop, fixing motorcycles. He often stared at the sky and thought of what could have been. But Ibuka didn't gloat. Instead, he returned home 5 years later, not as a student, not as a hustler, but as a man transformed. He came back to Lagos with a calm smile, walking through the same dusty streets where his dreams had first been born. This time he carried laptops, not luggage. He opened a tech hub for young people, teaching them to dream with integrity, to rise through perseverance, and to chase purpose over shortcuts. Years passed. London had changed and so had Ibuka. Now in his early 30s, he was a respected name in the UK tech industry, calm, focused, and deeply rooted in his purpose. He had successfully built his own fintech company, Green Path Systems, aimed at helping African immigrants manage finances, avoid scams, and build legitimate wealth. He had been featured in local newspapers, invited to speak at tech conferences, and even recognized by the Nigerian High Commission in the UK for his contributions to community empowerment. Yet, despite his rising fame and fortune, he never forgot where his journey began, or who he began it with. He still wrote to Jibril, who had served 4 years and was now released on parole. Jibril's letters had changed over time. What once were angry, defensive scribbles had turned into remorseful, reflective messages, often filled with regret and questions about second chances. Ibuka didn't respond with lectures or blame. He responded with books, course links, and encouragement. "You still have time," he once wrote. "You made a mistake, but your story isn't over." Back in Nigeria, Tund was also trying to rebuild his life. He worked as a mechanic in his father's old garage in Abeokuta. His days were hot, long, and quiet. He didn't speak much anymore. He often watched children play football in the street, remembering the days he, Jibril, and Ibuka had once done the same. One day, as he wiped oil from his hands, he heard someone call his name. "Tund." He turned around and froze. There stood Ibuka, dressed simply in jeans and a shirt, holding a laptop bag and smiling. For a moment, there was only silence. Then Tund looked away, ashamed. But Ibuka walked forward and embraced him. "You're still my brother," he said. That same week, Ibuka invited Tund to Lagos to join a training program at his tech hub. It was a decision many questioned, but Ibuka didn't believe in canceling people. He believed in restoration. Meanwhile, Jibril, back in London, began taking online classes from prison. After his release, he took small jobs, saved money, and stayed out of trouble. With Ibuka's help, he was later able to secure a remote job with a Nigerian startup. One afternoon years later, all 3 friends reunited in Lagos, under the same roof they had once shared as kids. This time they were older, wiser, and deeply aware of life's fragile turns. They sat outside watching the sunset, drinking soft drinks, no longer boys chasing dreams, but men who had paid the price for their choices and lived to tell the story. Ibuka stood up and looked at them both. "We may have taken different paths, but we are not defined by our lowest moments. What matters now is what we build going forward."